Welcome back, ladies, to week 5 as we are going into costuming as our second aspect of dramaturgy. So, last week, I hope most of you all were present for the Zoom class when we read out the play. Of course, if you have any questions on that, feel free to message me. This week, we're going into our second aspect of dramaturgy. Remember, I said that for the majority of this term, you're going to be dramaturgs for this play that you've been working on. So this week we're going to go into costuming, which I hope is going to be exciting for some of you. Well, I would hope for all of you, but So this class is almost kind of like a slideshow. It's like a show and tell. So don't worry too much about taking notes or anything like that. I just want you to see the concepts, be introduced to them, be introduced to different ideas of how things work as costuming goes, so that you could create your own things at the end of it. The whole point of this is so that you get to flex your creative muscles, so that you get to create something that is your own. Because I'm almost certain that in doing classes online, you don't get very many chances to make things that are your own. So for this, there are no right or wrong answers. It's really just what you receive from it and what you want to create. Whatever ideas you have, I want to see them, and you literally cannot go wrong once you follow the rough guidelines that I'm going to introduce you to in this presentation. So don't worry too much about taking notes or anything. Just look and observe and see, and be able to internalize that and put it into practice at the end. So without further ado, let's get into costuming, costume design. So of course, we learned that a costume designer is part of the production team. And all the members of the production team will work together to make sure that the aesthetic of the production looks good, basically. And of course, the costume designer may or may not collaborate with the makeup artist, who is usually also the makeup designer, to ensure that whatever the characters wear, they look however they're supposed to look. So today this week, you are going to be a dramaturg who's giving advice to the costume designer. Now remember, we spoke about the dramaturg being a research expert, or the person on the production team who's responsible for researching, so that they will find out all the things that are necessary for the background of the designs and the background of the script and all that jazz. So we are going to watch a little bit of a video, a little clip about how work is as a professional costume designer.
This might have a little more pizzazz.
My name is Emilio Sosa, and I am a costume designer. A costume designer is responsible for the look of the show, and that incorporates everything from the hair, shoes, makeup, and clothing that the actor wears throughout the show. There's no typical day in the life of a costume designer, because every day is different depending on what you're doing. Some days are fitting days, which is when we are fitting the actors in the clothing. Some days are shopping days, when I'm shopping for the clothing. And some days are just research days. As a costume designer, I do not work alone. I have an assistant. Then we have our tailors, you have sewers, you have artisans. I think the most important skills that you need to be successful as a costume designer is you have to have the art of collaboration. Because like I said, you don't work alone. You're always working with a team. You have a director who has a vision, and our job as a costume designer is to support that vision. You need to be able to like research, because depending if it's a period piece or if it's a current piece, you have to be able to research. Also, you have to be able to handle deadlines and not stress out, because it's a very stressful environment, but you always have to be cool under pressure. And I think that's the most important, attribute, is not to let the job overwhelm you. I have a fashion degree. I studied fashion design in New York at Pratt Institute. So most importantly, I think for anyone in this industry, you have to really figure out how things are made. The fabric you choose is dependent on the design. Not every fabric does the same thing, so you have to have a knowledge of fabric.
So some of the things that a costume designer would have to do, as you would have heard from the video as well, they create the look of the character. They would create sketches and of their designs or ideas for costumes. They also select fabric and color combinations. Last term, we would have done a little bit of an exercise where we would envision what colors different characters would wear according to our ideas for the aesthetic and according to the character's personality. So that is something that costume designers take into consideration as well, because there are certain colors associated with certain things. For example, purple is associated with royalty. Colors like orange are associated with youth and things like that. They also shop for fabric and accessories to match their designs. They will supervise construction with a seamstress or a tailor. Sometimes they are the seamstress or the tailor themselves, but in other cases, they will just make sure that everything is being sewn correctly. And very important, in the production budget, there will be there'll be an allowance for costumes. So they have to work within that. If you tell them, okay, you have $500 to outfit 5 people, that means $100 a head, then they have to work within that budget, more or less. The dramaturg, on the other hand, will give ideas and advice to the costume designer. That is basically what they will do to ensure that the designs are appropriate in terms of some things that we're going to discuss in the next few slides. So, what are the things that costuming will communicate or should communicate? The era. So it will tell you when the play is based, when it is set, and whether that time is in the past or in the present. It will tell you the social status or the class level of a character, so whether they are upper class, lower class, middle class. So obviously royalty is not going to dress the same way as a vagrant would, or an ordinary person, or a maid would. Race, usually. So different races in history generally dress differently, and we're going to see that in some pictures coming up a little bit later down. It will tell you the climate. Obviously, you're not going to have costumes with huge coats or boots, even though some people do dress like that in this climate, and I cannot understand why. You all have this habit of wearing hoodies in the hot sun, and I can't understand it, but it is what it is. So costume would indicate the climate of where the play is set. So typically in tropical countries, you'll have more loose clothes, lighter clothes, less layers and things like that. Of course, it will indicate age, because children don't dress the same way that adults do. Teenagers don't dress the same that older people do. Character, which would include things like their job and their personality. So somebody who's a nerd, you will use the typical things associated with nerds, like suspenders, glasses. They'd be very neat, things like that. And the occasion. So that goes to say whether it is formal or informal, whether they're going to a wedding or they're going to the market. You won't dress the same for these occasions unless that is some kind of quirk of the character, unless you have a character who's always dressed up. The costume would indicate where they are going and what type of occasion it is. And of course, all of these things make up culture. At the end of the day, costume encapsulates culture of whatever background the character belongs to, or whatever background the play is set in. So let's talk a little bit about era, location, race, and class in costume. So the picture on the left shows 1940s London, and the picture on the right shows 1950s. So if you look at this picture here, you will notice that my guy who my cursor is going over, he is probably dressed a little bit more casually because he's not wearing a suit and tie, even though back in those days a suit and tie was not as formal as it is now, especially in a place like London. So you see, of course, they're going to be wearing jackets and hats, wearing style, but they're going to be wearing jackets because the climate demanded that. On the other hand, now, if you look at the 1940s and 50s in Trinidad, you see that the hats are still a very big part of the way they dress, but the kinds of clothes are very different. And of course, children are dressed differently from adults. Now, the thing about this picture is that these are Afro-Caribbean people in Trinidad, but on the other hand, at the same era, you would have seen Indian people dress a little bit differently. So this would have been pretty soon after indentureship started. So Indian people were more or less quite new to Trinidadian society. So at that point in time, they would have dressed quite similar to how they did in India. And of course, the climate in India is very similar to the climate in Trinidad. So you could see the difference between the same era but different location in terms of dress. So if you were to be a dramaturg for a play set in this era, you would look at pictures like this to kind of inform how you would dress your characters. So now this is an actual stage play that was set in this era, and it is set in the Caribbean and in London, and things like the colors would also indicate the different settings. So if you look at this scene, this was in Jamaica. So this is on stage in London, but the setting was in Jamaica and in between Jamaica and London. And of course, again, so you see in light colors, bright colors. The hairstyles are a little bit different, quite conservative. Again, same play. So we're looking at the Caribbean. It's very vibrant, sort of lighter items of clothing, a lot of hats and things like that. Again, so different shoes and the kind of shoes we would probably wear nowadays. But on the other hand, in the same play, you see when they switch to the setting in London, which is a colder country, the items of clothing are completely different. And the colors are a bit more neutral, are a bit more dull because the climate also is more dull. The environment is more dull than the Caribbean is. So moving on to the 1970s. So this would have, you see, bell-bottom jeans are in style. The afros, the big hair was in style because this was around the time of the Black Power movement. So on the left you see female fashion, on the right you see male fashion in the 1970s. So this would have been in America, and generally, however they dress in America is going to be very similar. It's going to inform how we dress in the Caribbean as well in a particular era. So the 1970s in the Caribbean, on the other hand, so this picture is in Jamaica and this picture is in Trinidad. But another thing you're going to notice is that they're different occasions. So this would have been more casual. They're obviously at home. They don't even have on shoes, most of them. So their dress is going to be a whole lot less formal. When on the picture on the right, which is in Trinidad, you can see they were probably going to a party or something like that. Something celebratory, so they're going to dress up a lot more. So let's move on to something a bit more recent in the 1990s. These are actually my parents. So this is how older people might have dressed in the 1990s. You see the high waist is in style, but not the bell bottom so much. Pants are sort of loose, things like that. But this is how older people would have dressed, probably like middle-aged people, late 30s, around that age group. When younger people probably would have dressed something more similar to this. And the thing about fashion is that it comes around. So a lot of these styles came back again recently, in the recent years. So things like the high top, the bright colors, the color block, the big gold chains, things like that. So this would have been in America, and of course it was very heavily influenced by hip hop culture and stuff like that. On that note, before I move on, one thing you have to bear in mind when you are creating costume ideas for your characters is that you have to give them ages. In most of the script, you're not going to get much indication of how old the characters are, but of course it's completely up to you. You could decide how old they are, use your creative skills to decide how old your characters are, and that is also going to inform how you dress them as a dramaturg. So we're just going to look at costume sketches because this is going to be one of the options for your homework this week. So these sketches are from a musical called The Wiz. So you just take a moment and look and see how sketches will translate into real life costumes on stage. So the sketches are of course flat, so you don't get to see a lot of things like the texture, but in a few slides later we'll get to see how a costume designer will indicate things like texture and more 3D effects through a sketch. So again, so these are two characters, these sketches for them, and those are the costumes are actually on stage. And most times you will sketch after an actor has been cast, so you'll sketch according to their body type and things like that as well. So this is more or less a format for how sketches look. As I said, it's really up to you. There's no strict, hard and fast way to do it. But typically you'll have, well, I would hope that you'd have the character's name, and then you have some descriptions of whatever is most important, whatever you can't see just from it being a plain drawing. So you see the designer said here that the wig and color are the same. There's embroidery on the shoulder, that kind of thing. So you don't have to be a great artist to do these kinds of things at all. You just have to be able to really represent color and shape. So this is another one from The Wiz as well, the Tin Man. And yeah, so you see there's the character name on the top, and then some descriptions, or you might even have a sketch of it from a different angle. So now this gives a little depiction of how you'd be able to demonstrate what types of fabrics. You'd actually take samples of the fabrics from the fabric store and attach it to the designs. These are called swatches. These are called fabric swatches. So I'll be able to say, okay, these are the exact colors that this costume is going to appear in, and these are the details, the embroidery and stuff that is going to appear on it. So this is another way that you can do sketches. The next thing we're going to look at very briefly before I explain the homework is mood boards. So what is a mood board? You probably may not have heard of it before, but a mood board is basically a collage of anything visual that helps you to see an idea or a feeling about something. So a mood board can be digital or physical. So of course you can actually create a collage, cut and paste and stick things together on a piece of paper or on a board, a Bristol board, anything like that. Or it can be digital, so you can make a digital collage. There are actually programs, there's software that makes mood boards for you as well. So if you're able, then you could look into that too. So the sources, remember we always talk about primary and secondary research. The sources could be from anywhere. From pictures on the internet, from books, from pictures that you have taken, from fabrics, from textures, from newspapers, anything, literally anything. A mood board is anything that helps you to communicate these ideas. And the nice thing about a mood board is that if you're not a person of many words, then a mood board is perfect because you don't actually have to describe anything. It just has to depict whatever concept, however you visualize something. Your mood board must just make me feel whatever that is. You don't have to you can include words, but you don't have to write to explain whatever you've put in this collage. So the thing about a mood board, just like a sketch, is something that you're going to develop on later on. You don't just sketch a costume and leave it like that. You sketch a costume and then it goes into production. So a mood board is something that's going to inspire your ideas coming down the line. So this is an example of a mood board, and another thing is that they may include sketches as well. So you might have your own sketches or somebody else's sketches on a mood board. You see this person has some words that I guess will jump out at them. This, I believe, is cotton candy, which probably doesn't even have anything specifically to do with the design, but it helps the person to understand the kind of feeling and the kind of colors or the kind of textures that they want to be associated with this particular design. This is another mood board. So you see it's literal. This one is mostly, if not only, images from the internet. So it's just a collage to get you to feel the sense of a particular era. This is another mood board. I'm actually not sure what it was for, but obviously the person's inspiration was between indigenous people and then swimwear. So you see they also include colors. So these are the colors that will go along with the aesthetic of whatever they're doing. And I suppose the indigenous people's clothes also contain those colors. So that's why they decided to include it in this particular mood board. And you see the format really varies. You can do anything with it. That's the nice thing about a collage. You can make it your own. Another one here. So this one is very different. You see there are words like strong, self-reliant woman, hints of her past, and then there's a collection of photos. And look, there's a fabric swatch here as well to help you understand the textures associated. So it's literally just anything that helps to convey these ideas. Another one here. This one has a sketch as well. This one has pictures of objects, as well as, what you might call these things, accessories. There's a word. I suppose the character's name may have been Katerina. That's who they're designing for. Right. As I did say that this class was going to be short, I just wanted to give ideas before we skip to our homework. So as you might guess, you are going to create, you can do as much as you want. You can do sketches and a mood board, or you can do sketches or a mood board. I just want you to take at least 2 characters and create your own sketches for them, or your own mood board, or do both of them. Once it's for at least 2 characters. You could do for all of the characters if you want. You could do for 3, you could do for 4, you could do for 2. Once it's at least 2. And I would also like you to include a description or a picture of one prop that you think would be for each of the characters. One prop that you think they would need for their portrayal. Now I'm going to upload a checklist so that when you're done with your sketches or your mood board, and of course you could upload this however you want to do it. If you have a tablet and you can sketch on your tablet, that's great. If you want to do sketches in a copybook or on a blank sheet of paper, just take pictures and upload them in the assignment folder on Edmodo. If you want to do your mood board physically, or if you want to do it digitally, literally, I just want to see your ideas, and there's no right or wrong answer, but of course I'm going to be marking it. Right, so I was saying that I'm going to upload a checklist. So once you're done with your designs, you just need to make sure that it does all of these things. So of course, because remember you're a dramaturg, so the whole point of this is doing research so that your designs are inspired by whatever you research. Because remember, as a dramaturg, it's your job to make sure that it's accurate, that your designs look correct, that they don't look like the 1940s when the play is actually set in the 1950s. And on that note, it's all up to you. Because of the events that happen in the ping pong, which is mainly based on the violence that would have happened between steel bands in Port of Spain, you can set your play anytime between the 1940s and 1960s. So what I would recommend is that You go on Google. All of the pictures, most of the pictures that I had in these slides were from Google. So I would recommend you go on Google, look up the different aesthetics in the different time periods, and pick whichever one you like the most and use that as your inspiration and set your play in that particular time period. It's really up to you. It's all up to you. And of course, primary and secondary research. So some of the pictures would have been from my own family photo albums at home. So you can do that as well. You can ask your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, hey, you were a youth in the 1980s. Can I see a picture of how you used to dress? Things like that. So all of these things can help to inspire your designs. So that is basically it. As always, if you have any questions, queries, or concerns, feel free to contact me. Quickest way would be to message me on Edmodo. And that's it. Thank you for paying attention.